Square roots and cube roots. This is a digital lesson. It can be used for younger students who are learning square roots and cube roots for the first time. It can also be used for older students who have already worked with integers. So it starts with a definition. What a square root is, it's the inverse of squaring a number. So it gives them an example, tells them that this is called a root or radical sign. It shows them a multiplication chart where you can easily find perfect squares. And then it explains that you may have an approximate square root. For example, the square root of 5 would be a decimal approximately 2 and 236 thousandths for the square root of 5. So they would need a calculator to find these square roots. If they're whole number square roots, they're called perfect squares. And then the students are just going to type in the perfect squares for each one of these. They can refer back to the multiplication chart if they need to. Now they've got some square roots where they need to use a calculator, and they're going to be asked to round to the nearest hundredth. Then there's a definition of cube root. Cube root's going to have this little 3. And for example, this cube root of 8 would be 2. 2 multiplied by itself 3 times. Not all numbers have cube roots that are whole numbers. If they are whole numbers, they're called perfect cubes. So students are going to find these perfect cubes. Just type in the answer. And then they've got a sentence frames, and they're going to drag and drop these terms into the correct place in the sentence frame. So they just click on the outside, and then they can move this where it needs to be. Just a review of the vocabulary. Now you can stop there if your students are younger. If you have older students that have worked with integers, you can move on to slide 11. And it explains that the square root of 25 has 2 possible answers, 5 and -5. And so on slide 12, they're going to give both of those answers. So for example, here they would type 8 and -8. Okay, now does this work for cube roots? Well, it does not work for cube roots because if you multiply a negative number times itself 3 times, you're going to end up with a negative number. However, you can have the square root of a negative number. For example, the square root of -8 would be -2. And so then they're going to type in these cube roots. They're all going to be negative numbers. And then the very last slide offers them a challenge. So what is the 5th root of 243? What number multiplied by itself 5 times equals 243? And that's a lesson on square roots and cube roots.